Hi, Desiree. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be with you.
Yes, me too. Um, so you do a certain type of reading, and I love the way you describe it. If you could kind of give an overview, it resonates a lot.
Yeah, well, it was such an honor to just do your reading and to allow me to look at your chart. I practice esoteric astrology, which is looking at our astrology or where the placement of the planets and the stars were at the moment we were born. And the wisdom that comes from that is that I believe that our souls chose to be here, that we raised our hand and said, pick me. I want to go down to Earth school. I want to learn all the things. And so we come down here wanting to learn a specific or evolve through in a specific area. And so when we're born, all of the planets and all of the stars at the moment of our birth are holding the energies that we will evolve through. So how we love, what our purpose is, the energies that are with us all the time, from the moment of our birth until the moment of our last breath, are like a board of directors sitting around a table with a picture of us in the center. And they are rooting for us and they want our success and they want us to evolve and they want all the things. And they are each giving a very specific flavor of energy into our lives. And so for me, when I looked at it that way and when I had my first reading, I just felt so much permission. Like, oh my goodness, all these areas where I think I'm doing it wrong, or I have a story that like I shouldn't be like this. It's like, no, like, what if that is the gift? What if that is the gift that I get to grow through, that I get to learn through, that I get to have as just a natural vibrancy of my being? And when I changed that perspective, I just felt like my heart opened up and I felt so much more compassion, not only for myself, but also for all of the interactions that I have with others. Like we're all here wanting to evolve. Our little spirits and souls are just so enthusiastic to come down to this place. And then we're, living through it and this process of remembering why we came here and what are we here to do and why are we here to do it. So that's the beauty of
Yeah,
it.
yeah. I love that visual of the board of directors here cheering me on, And then the thing that you said about like loving all the parts of yourself and having compassion for, I have this mantra like that I've very recently started practicing, which is just, no, what if this is happening for me? When I start getting all crunchy and irritated and like, this isn't going right and that's not going right. Cause I think I was sharing with you that I was scheduled to do an Instagram live and I had my saboteur come online and just line things up so that it was not going to happen. And one of the things was getting pulled over and when the sheriff was waiting for me to dig my license out of my suitcase like in the back of my truck because I had just returned from a festival. um I was like, he's like, why were you speeding? And the truth was I didn't even know what the speed limit was, but I was like, oh, I was just rushing, I have a call. And he's like, is it a work call? And I'm like, yeah. And I'm like, but maybe it's just not meant to be. But like, how we can we can try to like shellac a bad situation with maybe toxic positivity or whatever. But when you think of it from that perspective, like this is my chart and this is designed and things are placed here and everything's rooting for me. And then you say something like, oh, this is happening for me. This is happening for me. You pointed out how like I realized afterward that I was headed straight for the Mexican border by myself with my two kids. I needed to get pulled over to stop me from going further. And then where I pulled over after that, like I had two border patrol cars sitting right there. So it was just, I was going to a place where there wasn't going to be any cell service. The IG Live wasn't going to work there anyway. So
It's just such a beautiful illustration of like, it's all happening, all the things, right? All at the same time. And while I don't always, go to the philosophy of like, oh, there's a reason for everything, but as humans, we are meaning makers. and we get to decide what the meaning is of everything. So, and it's, if all the things are happening, the one that's trying to sabotage, the one that knows that you're going in the wrong direction, the one that knows that you will feel calm if you know that these two border patrols, these armed guards are right there surrounding you and your children so that you can focus on doing what you have to do. Like, all of those things are happening, and it's up to us to pick which story, which energy, which meaning we're going to hold as like, oh yes, this is for me. And I love that. I love that. You know, I think that it does get a bad rap of like toxic positivity, but asking the question, like, what is for me in this? What is actually for me in this situation, in this moment, in this era of my life? I think it just really helps reframe the conversation, or especially the internal dialogue.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because if that had happened to me a year ago, or maybe even 6 months earlier, I might have been like, oh my God, like this is so awful. Like, why is everything against me right now? Or yeah, it just isn't meant to be. I'm just not meant to do this. So I need to quit because this is hard. And that means that it's not right for me and I need to quit. And it's like, well,
Maybe a little more inquiry. Maybe.
yeah,
Yeah, let's just see.
yeah.
No, totally. And it's so, I mean, I think that's, you know, the paradox of most things is that there's, you could take any lens and look through it and see an entirely different narrative. And it's like, you know, which one? And we talked about that a lot in the reading of like really kind of checking in, like, what story am I telling myself right now? And you mentioned parts, like, which one of my parts is active, or are many of them active right now? And they're all screaming at each other, like, and then deciding, you know, how to kind of have compassion in that moment of like, okay, what wants to be heard? What part of me is not feeling safe? What part of me is feeling super activated? What part wants to really be heard? Like all of these different parts, and kind of like soothing our own self first and then moving on to what we want to do.
Yeah. And the ability to tap in and listen to those parts is something that healing work does. And then also the ability to hear the different stories, like to be able to line them up pretty quickly. Like as you heal, you can, oh, I've got a sprinkle of variety of positive and negative and neutral and whatever, and I can label all of them. Which story is most supportive of my truest desire right now? I'm going to go with that one.
Yeah. Like lean into what actually feels the best right now. Like they all might be talking, but which one actually like makes you want to lean in? And then, yeah, that's a good way to figure it out.
Yeah. And then that's how we create amazing outcomes, like manifestation and things like that. One of the things that we talked about earlier was um, like my money manifestation situation that just happened this past week, where I was like very fearful about the amount of money I had. And then there was this call to go to this festival. And I was like, no, that doesn't make any sense. I mean, I've got my kids and I have this limited amount of money, and this is very irresponsible and dangerous and silly. And it's not the right choice, but everything in my body was like, no, we're doing this. We're doing this. It wasn't even a question. It was like, this is happening. So please get on board. Like all the softness in my body that I could feel. Like when I thought about not going, it was contraction, it was stress, it was, and then when I thought about going, it was like, oh, softness, joy, pleasure, like, okay, feeling really supported. So I'm like, okay, I'm going. And then I go and then I manifest, almost $30,000. And just, and the practice that I was in was, we went to the festival. It didn't feel awesome to be there, like with my two kids. So it was like, okay, we spent the amount of hours that we needed to spend and we're all done, and we're gonna just chill at this really nice house on the river, and the kids are gonna play and do what they want to do, and I'm just gonna sit with myself and like feel all of this fear and all of this contraction, let it pass through, and then catch the things that aren't supportive, which for me was the constant adding up of the bills and the adding up of the deposits, and how is this going to work and how is it all going to fit together? And once I realized, no, a relaxed, wealthy woman doesn't do that. And I start embodying what a relaxed, wealthy woman feels. She feels gratitude, joy, all kinds of options. She doesn't busy her mind with little things like math constantly. And then bam, got what I wanted, like within 2 days. So
Incredible. I mean, and it's such a beautiful illustration of like that deep listening, because at every point in the journey, there were multiple voices, right? There was a voice that was saying, you know, at the beginning, this is not practical, this is not logical, X, Y, and Z, all the sound reasons. They are not untrue things, they're reasons. And yet there was a part of you that was like, my heart, like it's more than the heart. It's like a visceral feeling of like leaning in, and you listened and you brought your babies and you went to this festival and you paid the money to go for multiple days. And then another voice came and said, this doesn't really feel in alignment. And again, the dialogue, it could have been, well, we already paid for it. Well, I need to be here. Well, I came all this way. No, you leaned into what felt the best. And then in like on every level, it was like leaning in and feeling. And every time you did that, you were rewarded with another thing to lean into and another thing to lean into. And then culminating in this beautiful, you know, blessing of abundance that, you know, came from the least expected place. And that, and
yeah,
like hearing when we hear other stories, we have our own, but it just invigorates the trust of like, wow, this ability that we have to not only listen with our mind, listen with our heart, but also the visceral, like, temple of our body, to know when we're feeling like, oh, my spine is so contracted right now, or my stomach is so tight, versus like, oh, my heart is so open, or oh, my shoulders feel so relaxed. You know, all these little, you know, sounds and things that are coming through us in different ways, and then how we lean into that. I just thought it was such a beautiful, and I was so invigorated by the story.
I love that. Yeah, that is so, and all of those stories did come up. Like I paid for the festival, my friends are all going, I'm paying for this whole trip. What am I doing not going? It wasn't necessarily that I needed to be at the festival. It was more like, yeah, we're gonna do it and we're gonna see it and we're gonna experience it and the kids are gonna experience it, and we got what we needed from it. And then the rest of what we got was like just like jumping in the river and being with our friends that were in the house with us, and them and the friends experiencing that whole dynamic with children. Like, you know, a couple of them are about to have a baby, so there was that dynamic happening, and I don't know what's happening for everybody else, and you know, I don't even know what's happening for me or my kids. That's what's so exciting about life. I think it's an adventure.
And it's this like constantly leaning into the self-trust. And to your first point, like what is here is for me. And if I don't jump ahead and dictate the way it should unfold, and I actually just get to interact with each unfolding for their own unique thing, it doesn't make the doubts and all these other things go away, but we build the muscle of like actually working with them and saying, so that we can remember the next time that the fear comes up or the doubts or all these true facts that exist that are in complete contradiction to the way that my body feels or my heart feels. Now there's a proof point to say, oh, remember that time when all those things were true and I still leaned in and I got this, you know, expansion of, like you said, lots of different things, not just the physical and financial abundance, but the experience with your children, the experience of being able to jump in a river, the experience of being able to be in a house with friends. Like all of those gifts are just nourishing the parts of you that were hungry.
Yeah, yeah. I love that. So let's use my chart as an example a little bit, so you can kind of like go through it and tell me what you see, and just do a demonstration of what you do, basically.
Yeah, well,
That's
it's you know, obviously looking at the chart, it's so unique for everyone because in this modern day, you know, a lot of people talk about the sun sign. Oh, I'm an Aries, I'm Sagittarius, I'm Cancer, you know, whatever when you are. And that is one aspect, but it's like saying, oh, I'm chocolate, or it's like, no, within that, there's a million different flavors. And it's like astrology is anything but generic when you look at it in its entirety. And so what we spent a lot of time on earlier is really looking at your life from what did my soul come in to evolve through? And there's specific aspects in the chart that talk about your purpose in this life or your life lesson. And that will be a theme that will continue to run through your life. So I asked you about a few specific dates. You very well articulated what was going on in life in, multiple different years and different time periods. And we see, okay, this is how your life lesson shows up for you. This is how the ability to trust yourself, self-trust, and how you interact with others as it relates to power dynamics, to the dynamic of money, sexuality, control, all these different exchanges, how they show up for you, and how the flavor of that usually lands in your home environment. Where do I physically live, and what do I call mine? And so, without going into the full reading, it was just so beautiful for me as an astrologer to ask questions, to listen to someone in their own language, tell me and really describe to me the uniqueness of how that comes through for them. I can see the big picture in the chart, but it's the uniqueness of your specific life. And when you start to see themes and even language coming up again and again, gives me so much trust that wow, there's so much intelligence in how we come into this life. And if we really listen and learn, wow, we start really gaining the knowledge and experience, and we start elevating and evolving and expanding just so much faster.
Yeah, and that kind of brings up the concept of faith. And I think when I was younger, because I grew up in well, we both did, very controlling religious environment. I tried to go atheist. I thought that if I stopped believing in God, then I would be able to unbrainwash myself, basically, because I knew I had been brainwashed, and I knew that there were I could just feel that all of these stories were incorrect somehow. I didn't know which ones were incorrect or why, but I knew they didn't feel good. I knew that I was a more expansive being than what I had learned in that religion. So trying to go atheist, then I just felt so alone. And it actually, I think in some ways it increased the fear. In other ways it decreased it. It's again like telling yourself a story that's either supportive or not supportive of what you want. And at the time I thought, okay, I'll dive into career and making money and going up the corporate ladder, so power. And I'm going to get crazy about sexuality. So at 15, I lose my virginity. I don't like that term, but I start, just going straight for sexuality and trying to be like, this isn't that big of a deal. Like, why are they making it such a big deal? And the way that I went about it all, wasn't supportive, because I wasn't trusting in the intelligence. You just mentioned the intelligence, that there's all this design happening, and this intelligence and this love and this greater power. And when you try to disconnect from that and you think that it's just you and everything's random, it can just be it can create a lot more fear, and it's not a supportive story. So, I mean, whether you want to believe in a higher power or not, a universal intelligence, or an intelligence that's in you, that's divine, can be really supportive. What are your thoughts?
Definitely. I mean, I feel like anytime we whiplash, right, we say, I've had this, I'm going to this. It's like we're leaving parts of ourselves out of the story and out of the narrative. And when, and having done that myself in different ways, I definitely can relate. And really, it's like, okay, what does my heart know to be true? When I really feel into something, even though perhaps, God, the creator, maybe that was really tarnished for a long time and was described in a very narrow definition of what that means. But when I really feel into my heart and I'm, have my feet on the ground, or I'm looking at nature, or I connect with someone in a beautiful way, like I feel the benevolence of the universe. I feel that there's so much love, and there's just so much more than what that original narrative was. And I think like for me, I've always felt such a connection to the divine. And yes, it's very interesting that I incarnated into a very strict definition of what that was, with lots of rules and sharp edges and, a lot of top down energy. And yet that wasn't true for me. Like it just never was true for me. And so when I left a lot later than you. I left, in my late 20s. So I was really in that community for a very long time. And so to go back and to relearn what is true for me, relearn where my, like, what does my heart lean into? What does my soul feel like? It's like expanding when I think about, one way of thinking about God or the universe or the divine. That journey for me has been the greatest gift of my life, like that expansiveness. And I actually can look back and appreciate, oh, I appreciate why I was born into a family that was so strict on their belief systems. Because while, yes, God was defined as a certain way, we were so indoctrinated in that religion, but it did teach me how to be of service to others, how to think about things beyond just what's happening in my own experience. Like God can read your heart. We were taught that. So I was constantly checking in, like, am I just saying something, or is this like, am I speaking truth? Am I being truly authentic? And I think back now, wow, I'm so grateful that even though there were a lot of things I maybe wouldn't have chosen, I'm so grateful that that was really instilled at a very young age, because I trust that feeling in my heart. And so, yeah, it's just been an ever.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, a strong work ethic was also something that, like, just integrity, strong work ethic. And I just learned, the one thing I would say, that even though that religion was so incredibly, I would say, bureaucratic, um, I still learned that my relationship with God was individual, and that I could speak directly to God. Because some churches, some religions teach you that you have to go through the church or a priest to speak with God. And this one, it was like, no, you have a personal relationship with God. And there's a personal, I mean, it was a flavor of accountability, but because what I could feel from the universe was that benevolence you were talking about, it was like, yes, something about this story isn't quite right, but I do know that I have this deep connection, this personal connection, this, strength that is supporting me. So that was a really beautiful thing that I learned from it as well.
Yeah, and it
Yeah.
goes back. It's all the things, right? We could look at any aspect of our upbringing, even though we had very different upbringings, we can look at the religion, and there is an entire narrative that can come off of just one aspect, or there's a whole, like, what did I receive from this? What did I get to learn through? What skills do I have on the other side of learning through the contractions? That, yes, maybe I will not raise my son that same way. I would not put him in those same situations. As a mother, I get to choose that. But coming through that, what are the stories that I hold on to? And is it that, like, even just that one thread of having a direct relationship with the divine? That's incredible, that no one sits between, no person, place, or thing sits between me and source energy. That in itself is so empowering and beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, let's talk a little bit about the way the chart, empowers us. So you mentioned self-trust, like this, we talked about the different themes, the way that basically money, power, sex, and family showed up in these 7-year cycles in my life. You saw that they were happening just by reading my chart without really having, because we haven't really had in-depth conversations before this, right? So you don't know much about my life circumstances. So then, you know, you asked range of dates, what was happening in your life at this time. I remembered, talked about it. And then this was before you told me about those themes about money, sex, power, and family being recurring learnings in my. So I'm just describing what was happening between these years and these different 3 different times of my life. And you're like, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense because
Yeah, your life lesson is all about looking into the dark, confronting your fears, learning self-trust, learning through intimacy. Like, what is intimacy? First and foremost with yourself and then with others. And like I said, the flavor is all around the home, your root system, your heritage, where you come from. And so again, I could look at the energetics and the themes of it from the chart, but I don't know how that's true for you until you tell me about your life experience. And what is beautiful is that it's without fail. It's every time it works. I have already looked at the chart. I felt into the energy. I'm, interpreting the archetypes and where they're placed and how they're supporting or amplifying, or, there's tension. I could see all of that. But until I ask you about your own experience, do I know the flavor and the exact way that those energies are communicating with you? So it's this beautiful co-creation. I'm not a psychic. I have intuition, but I am looking at it truly from where the planets are placed and how they're aligned. And then you tell me your story, and it's like, okay, now I can help shed a little light on that nothing's gone wrong, that you haven't gotten it wrong, that this is what you're learning through. And look at how beautifully orchestrated and how much
you're frozen.
Sorry, am I back?
Okay. Sorry, back up a little bit. So you said that was my internet. You said nothing's gone wrong. That's the last thing I heard.
Yeah, that when we start a dialogue and I could talk to you about how the energies are working for you, then we get to look at circumstances that perhaps, there might have been some contraction about, or, oh, I shouldn't have done this, or I shouldn't have done that. And you see how beautifully and divinely orchestrated it was that your soul got to learn through that, and that you intuitively knew when to stand for yourself, or when to make the decision to stand for your children, or how to, like, again, even without ever having an astrology reading, we have so much intuition, and we're working with the energies that are there for us. And that to me is what gives me so much hope for humanity and so much confidence, is like, yes, we have these beautiful tools and we can help and receive guidance and have a better understanding and be given more permission. But honestly, like, our souls come in to learn through these things so that we can have the confidence that, oh, I know what self-trust feels like. I know when to lean into something that my heart wants versus listen to the fear. And then as we age, as we progress, we keep evolving that capacity, and our lessons get easier and our growth gets larger, and we have new experiences, and we're constantly on these like edges of our own growth, getting to dance with, like, this is uncomfortable, but now I know what discomfort feels like, and I know how to lean through it, and I know that there's something on the other side for me. And then it's like this, okay, we get through that cycle, and then we come up against another one, and it's like, I think it's the beauty of having the permission that, what if nothing's gone wrong? Like, what if we just took ourselves off the hook for, like, I didn't do it right? And what if it was just like, okay, that's what lessons came out of that? And can I have more compassion for the person next to me and what lessons they're going through? And, all of that is this like ever growing, ever evolving thing.
Yeah. And when we cultivate that compassion in ourselves, it naturally starts to radiate outward. It's really hard to have compassion for other people when we don't have any for ourselves. Like where we're like taking that whip to ourselves constantly. Like, of course, we don't have patience for anybody else. It's like this continuous thing from childhood that comes in for me is like, don't be such a baby, or stop being such a wimp about it. And the more that I work on not saying that to myself, and just like being like, oh my goodness, this part of me is scared, and it's okay to be scared, and it makes a lot of sense, and I've got me through this, like what you're talking about. That's when we're coming up on our edges, if we can be that compassionate, loving parent for ourselves and the parts that are on the edge, it makes it so much, it makes the whole journey more pleasurable, more joyful, because I can, my emotions that are crunchy or sticky don't disappear. I mean, we're always like, we go on this healing journey and we're like, I'm going to be better and everything's going to be perfect all the time. And it's like, no, but I can enjoy all the parts of it. Like I can recognize when I create a little extra pain for myself and I get a little kinky pleasure from it. Like I can lean into that and have compassion for myself and love for myself and make the whole thing more fun.
Absolutely. And that's it's such a big aspect of your chart, right? Like that divine mother energy, the healing, the being able to hold all of it. The paradox of like, this is really crunchy and this is really great. And it's all existing simultaneously. And I love what you said about the little kink. I mean, liberation is a big part of my chart. And I really contemplate that word a lot. Like, what is it? Liberation is not just like floating in freedom. It's that feeling of like, I'm bound and then I'm liberated. And that like kind of wearing something too tight and then it comes off and like the blood comes into your body and you just feel so good. Like, oh my gosh, that's an energy that like is in my life. I am working with it and weaving with it. And for so long, I felt like, oh, I shouldn't have gotten I put myself in a bad position. You know, I'm not a big blamer of others, but I always am like the critic to myself, like, oh, I did it wrong. I didn't do it right. You know, that kind of energy. And so to feel like, oh no, I get so much joy of like going from one to another. Just the motion in between is so delightful that it's like, I get it. Okay, I don't have to beat myself up. Like those movements from A to B were so like powerful for me. And yes, perhaps I could, course correct on a few things, but that is a way that my soul is, really loves that feeling of being liberated, that being moving from one constriction to a big release.
Yeah. Just hearing you describe that, like I can feel it in my body. It's so expansive. And the contrast, right, is having that tight, like you wouldn't get to feel the pleasure of that expansion and that liberation if you didn't have the contracted tightness to grow from. So and part of the human experience is sensation, like all the different sensations. Because as a spirit, we can have anything, whatever, but it's our body that creates sensation. And that's, I think, why we decide to incarnate as humans and have a body. And
For the full sensory experience. And like, our beautiful senses, taste, touch, smell, all these different things. It's like we're learning and receiving information and communicating through all of that. And when we get contracted, we start pinching those things off. So as we turn that back on, as we turn on our own turn on for life, if you will, it's like suddenly all of these senses are activated. And think about it like the full color wheel. Like, yes, that is the full life experience. It's all the colors, all the emotions, grief, pleasure, ecstasy, rage. It all exists. And when you just look at one, it's like, okay, I might not prefer that color over another. But when you look at the beauty of the color wheel, you see how all of the colors complement each other. And it's like the oppositions and the ones right next to it. And it's just that to me has helped me really accept that like I incarnated into this body to have the full human experience, meaning all of it. And when I constrict, like, I don't want to feel this, I don't want to feel grief or I don't want to feel sadness, I'm capping my peak. I'm capping my pleasure. I'm capping my ability to feel the full ecstatic nature of being human when I pinch any part off. And so this like softening into like, okay, can I just allow a little more? Can I receive a little more? And then what does that give me on the other side?
yeah, and that, I mean, when you talk about pinching off and allowing a little more, I mean, it brings me to sexuality. It's in my chart. Um, but it's like the religion, a lot of religions, and then, or at least Western religions, and then society are like, women should act like they don't want sex, and then they should be like a little bit of a tease, but ultimately they're supposed to pretend like they don't want that. And they're so like, you'll have conversations with women and they'll just be like, oh, my husband just wants it all the time and it's just exhausting. It's like, okay, we can pretend like we don't enjoy it and we don't want it, or but maybe it's not great because you're not connected and you're not really seeing and hearing each other and in tune with each other. So sure, that's possible. But when we pinch off that part of us, like if we can't dance with our hips, we have so much energy in that area of the body that needs to move. And there's so much beauty and pleasure there that if we're contracting it and stiffening it and trying to make it like, oh, that part of me doesn't exist because that would make me a temptress or dangerous or a whore, whatever, then we're capping everything else, like you said. Like, and then like the fear of if someone's been sexually assaulted, the fear of the pain will cause us to contract and stop the pleasure as well. So there's this thing that happens. So anytime we're contracting and we're in fear, we're shutting off the life force of every other part of us. And so like one of the practices, the sacred sexuality practices and self-pleasure is to just explore your own body to see how much you can allow, how much sensation you can allow. And then like that opens up so much more pleasure in every area of life. It expands you in every way: money, health, motherhood, like etc.
You're so right. I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. And, I don't think any of us come in wanting to contract and lock up that energy. I mean, if you watch any child, any baby, toddler, like they're so in their body, they're so in the moment, in the pleasure, in the play, they're so willing to like have the full spectrum. And to your point, we experience different things in life, get into different situations or have whatever it is that we start to contract. And I feel like that's the beauty of this evolutionary life, is that getting that our root, our security, our safety, and having that open up enough so that we can experience the full pleasure, the full lust, the full desire of being human, being in this physical body. And for some of us, it's a reclamation. It's that warrior energy that we're going to go grab it and take it back. For me, it was more of a softening. Like I had so much of that warrior steel spine kind of energy that it was more about, can I soften and just allow a little bit more? Like in this moment right now, I feel the sun coming on the side of my face. Can I just let myself revel in that just for a few seconds and feel how good that feels? And then, oh, like the sensation starts to go down my neck and that feels delightful. And then just allowing in a soft, sweet, welcoming way into my body. And it's not how I was raised to think like, oh, that's what, being an empowered woman looks like, but that's what it felt like for me. And so constantly giving permission into like leaning into what is our pleasure? What do we truly desire? Not, the pseudo desires that distract us on the outside, but when we close our eyes and open our hearts and tune into those places within us to say, what do I really want right now? What do I really desire? And then, trusting ourselves, just gently lean into that a little bit more and a little bit more. And then watching, to your point, how that ripples into everything in life, how we communicate with our loved ones, how we walk in this world, how we even greet people that we pass on the streets, our success financially, our secular, whatever that is. It's like the ripple effect is so meaningful when we connect with our heart's desires.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a couple things that I want to talk about a little more. Like you talked about an empowered woman. What does that look like? The steel spine. I mean, I had that like ambitious, got to be the breadwinner, got to be the super mom, take care of everything, make sure everything's handled. And if you can't keep up with me as my partner, well, I have disdain for you. And certainly I chose partners that were a mismatch. Like I needed someone who could keep up with me, but I had a part of me that felt like if I was superior, then I would feel superior in all ways. And then I would, find safety and I would be in control. And all of that, the softening is what really brought me more pleasure, more joy, more tuning into, wait, work all the time? Doing something that I don't love? No, like being in control, is control really worth shutting off all of my pleasure? Is it worth being so in my head that I can't feel my body and like I can't taste the food that like I paid $60 for a steak, but I can't taste it because I'm thinking about the bill and what we're going to do after this and how many drinks we're going to have and how I'm going to feel tomorrow, and if I pay for this now, what can't I do tomorrow? Like,
All the contraction.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So that was how I lived the majority of my life, because I was searching for that safety. And you talked about the root chakra and the safety. Our safety doesn't start in our external environment, in our external circumstances. We can't get it from somebody else. There will always be, we can like be hyper vigilant, always looking for the next threat and feel really unsafe all the time, or we can come into our body and listen to our body. Once we can feel our body, then we can listen to what it has to tell us, and it's telling us things all the time. I mean, that's how we feel our intuition, right? You mentioned how
Yeah.
do you feel your intuition?
For me, I definitely feel it in my body. So again, a very active mind. So it's, just a little inquiry, like, let me feel it. And I typically put my hands on my body and, I could feel if I say something and it's like, no, that's not true. We're contracted when you're saying that. There's no openness. It's coming from fear. And then it's like, okay, let me feel into that. Where is that story coming from? And I think what you just mentioned is it's why inquiry is so important. Like we have such an active mind, everyone, and we're plagued with stories, the ones we create ourselves, the ones we're hearing outside of us. And so just a gentle inquiry into like, is that really true? And what else is true? So you mentioned safety. Like, yes, there's a need for safety. And when we look at situations, in all situations, there will be a portion where we potentially don't feel safe. And simultaneously, we can find a thread of safety in even the worst moment. Perhaps the safety is just knowing that I will live through this. Perhaps the safety is just knowing that, like, I don't know, like whatever it is. And if we have the willingness to inquire beyond just what the fear is, and it's not negating the fear. It's not saying that doesn't have to exist and we're not bad for feeling it, but it's what else is true in this moment. And can I lean into that? Am I brave enough to trust and follow that thread and see what I can continue to find when I'm pulling on that thread of like, well, actually, I am safe in my body. And then like what comes from that? And I feel like that has been such a valuable practice for me in really separating, because my mind used to say, well, it's true. Well, this awful thing that is right now is true. And it's like, yes. And what else is true? What else is
Yeah.
in this exact moment? And I love that, Richard Rudd talks about like, authority really comes from being the author of your own story. What am I writing with this pen? What am I giving? What am I allowing to be a headline versus a subheader versus just a sentence in the story? And that, like the empoweringness of saying, okay, this is, yes, this situation did happen. This moment, this relationship, this whatever it is, it did happen. I can't write it out of my story, but it will not be the defining factor. It will not be the thing that taints everything else. It will be the thing that something else was born from. And I get to decide what was born from that. And that has been like such a gift of like really, and feeling, to your question about intuition, being able to know, like, my mind, she's so beautiful. She wants to protect me. She loves to be 5 steps ahead. She loves the pride of coming with taking care of everything and taking care of others. But when I tune into my body, that voice that is a different, wants to be held, wants to be nourished, wants to go a little bit slower, whatever it is at the moment. And suddenly then I'm in a dialogue with myself and I'm getting all of the information as opposed to just having it funneled through one voice, even if they're my own voices.
Yeah, yeah. And when we can find that place of safety within ourselves and within our bodies, even when something externally perceived maybe as terrible is happening, we can start changing the course of that by just being in our own energy, in safety. I mean, I've literally had far fewer frightening things happen in my life since I've been like, nope, I'm good. Like I'm safe. I'm okay. Anytime I return to my own safety, my own sense of safety, I've had things like about to go really far south. And I've been like, nope, that's not what we're doing. And it'll switch, it'll change.
And you're listening to the pin drops early on versus like squinting. I mean, I've done a lot of that in my life, squinting through things like, yeah, that looks okay. Just close my eyes a little tighter.
Yeah.
But listening and seeing those signs, and that life is always speaking to us. People are always showing us who they are. And we don't have to judge it. But I can say that is not in alignment with me right now. That does not activate the parts of myself that I just enjoy being, this freedom, vitality, these energy, I'm feeling contracted right now. And so I don't have to blame you, but I could say my body is speaking to me. And am I listening? And like you said, listening to those things, those little hints and pin drops along the way, we can course correct and we can navigate and then it's like, wow, in hindsight, you realize how you have avoided, potentially really difficult situations just by listening a little bit deeper, with a little bit more compassion for ourselves, first and foremost. And then, how does that affect those around me?
I have to back you up a little again because of my internet. So you were saying, I missed a part of it. It was, I'm going to edit this. So we'll take this little part out. But you were saying something about like being in the safety, and I don't know if you want to just repeat the part that you just said, like if you can remember.
Listening. When we listen to the pin drops, to the whispers, life is always speaking to us. So people show us who they are. If we listen, if we are just observing and in every interaction, what do I know about you right now? What are you revealing to me? What are you showing to me? Who am I showing myself to be in this dynamic? And if we listen and watch and are attuned to the subtleties, it helps us avoid, and to your point, course correct from like the big explosion or the big, brick through the window, but to say, oh no, I'm feeling in my body that I'm contracted, or even though everything sounds right, my spine is always like, for me, like when that goes rigid, it's like something doesn't feel right. And then I get to gently inquire within myself, not make a judgment, not whiplash myself, which I've, really had to learn not to do, or, been working with that part of myself, but be a little bit more gentle in the inquiry. What doesn't feel good right now? Or what would feel better? Leaving the conversation, attempting to course correct the conversation, like what do I actually need, and then listening to that and then celebrating the aftermath of that. To your point, all these beautiful things of you listening to yourself, I think the piece that we miss a lot of times is the celebration after, and like really imprinting that into our nervous system. Like, oh my goodness, I did the thing. I listened and this happened and that happened, and talking to our friends about it and really just reveling and milking it for all that it's worth, so that our entire nervous system knows when we do that, it is such a celebration after the fact. It's
Yeah.
so good. And just really kind of bringing that and helping that rewire these things that are so embedded in us, these ways of being that, to your point, to the life lessons that keep coming around. It's not like we can avoid it. It's not like we can say, oh, we're never gonna face that again. Oh no, we will. And hopefully, like a spiral staircase, we keep coming around to the same things, but from a different elevation and getting it to
Yeah.
perspective.
Yeah. And I love how you're saying, the jumping immediately to judgment, which that was something, it's so interesting uh to watch myself interact with certain people, particularly men, to have someone who's interested in me, and then the way that I navigate that, or have navigated it in the past, like to watch myself contract and do the thing, and then not say, okay, that's because he's giving me bad energy, but instead to be like, well, what's the story I'm telling myself right now? It's probably that story that my dad said, that the only thing men will ever want from me is sex. Oh, okay. Well, what if that's not? Like, what if he's actually having a real conversation with me and trying to see and hear me? And so like to watch ourselves repeat patterns and then notice the pattern, be like, okay, is this really, do I need to judge this person? Is he bad energy, or am I just in an old pattern that needs to be adjusted or explored?
And it's such a good inquiry, because it's like, what lens are we looking through while we're looking at it, right? So to your point, like, if you're looking at a man from the standpoint of, oh, he only wants this, or we're asking the question, like, is he honorable, or does he have integrity, or whatever these very important questions are, very important things to whatever our list is, or things that are important to us. They are important. I'm not trying to negate that, but what really helped me is reframing that to like, how is this man honorable? How is he showing me that he has integrity right now? And to switch my lens so that I can see, while this might not be the person for me, I can absolutely see a way that he is showing up in just a beautiful way. And again, like rewiring these old belief systems, whether that's about men or relationship or whatever it is, but reframing it to look for what we want to see in the world and then celebrate the fact that we see it. And we're not taught that growing up. Most people aren't. Hopefully our children, we're trying to teach them these new expansive ways of inquiry and of thinking. But just those little gentle reframes. I work with a lot of men. I employ a lot of men. And so even framing that and starting with like a very kind of safe environment of like, what lens am I looking through when I'm looking at this man? Am I looking for what he's not, or am I looking for what he is? And then when I see what he is, I could then make a decision that's like, oh, great, this is for me or not for me, or this is right for this interaction or not for this interaction. But at least I'm looking at him as a whole being and not as to like what I'm the most fearful of.
Yeah, and looking at someone like a whole being, is part of that is dropping your own agenda. Like if I were to go, if every interaction I have with a man is to be like, is he the one? Is he not the one? It's like, well, I'm missing out on a whole lot of people, and like perhaps the universe put this person in my path because there's something to like really enjoy or to learn or to find interesting, just to have amazing conversations. So first I have to drop the agenda and all those like stories and questions that I have in order to even see the person in front of me and allow. It's hard to listen to what somebody's saying when you're in your own head being like, no, no, that's evidence of something negative. Oh, that's evidence of something positive. Oh, that's evidence, like shh. Just be here and just feel. Like when we can open our body, there's different ways of opening our bodies. You don't want to open your body sexually to everybody you come across, but you can soften your body and be present with the person and actually look them in the eye and listen so that you get to have the interaction.
Yeah. And when we do it in that way, and I think that was one of just such a blessing of Fit for Service is, all of the stuff that we did with Kathy Courtney on, circling and listening well. It's like the exchange of that energy when we're really listening and our eyes are attuned to like, who are you? And just this excitement about seeing someone unfold right in front of our eyes. It's like the permission and the energy of that exchange is so different. And thus the result of that conversation and interaction is so different than, to your point, when there's a fear, coming in, or a judgment, or a show me, kind of energy. And it's like, it's helped with the ripple effect of my life from even those practices has been so huge in, like I said, everything, especially, my little boy, and just using some of these things on like, how am I really listening to him, and what energy am I approaching the conversation with, and expectation, and all of those things.
Oh yeah. Mentioning your little boy, like modeling, leading. This is what a life of pleasure looks like. You have permission to live fully in pleasure and to follow the things that bring you pleasure and joy and bliss. You don't have to sit in this dark box with making my bills is the only agenda that I have. Like if I make a certain amount of money, even if I hate what I'm doing all day, then that's going to buy me happiness. I'll buy that thing and then I'll feel really happy. It's like to model real pleasure for our kids in the mundane moments, in the way we eat, the way we dress, the way we're just like, if our kids see us, oh my gosh, I love doing what I'm doing. That just creates a whole new generation and a whole new world way of being.
Totally. And the embodiment of that, my little boy and I, we love to travel. So we travel a lot, and it's so fun because it does, travel puts you in all these situations. And as much as you want to, control
Yes.
or think, and even if you're on your way to somewhere wonderful, that journey can have lots of bumps in it. And so it's a beautiful practice of like, again, for me, like I'm his mom. So, what energy am I holding in this, moment where maybe it doesn't seem like on the outside anything is going right? Like, how am I holding myself? Do I still have access to my joy? Do I still have access to my aliveness? And then getting to see our dynamics in that. And you had mentioned, earlier in that story about the Instagram live, how before that, when you were at the event, when you were putting on and embodying, what does a wealthy woman feel like? How does that feel in my body? How does that feel? And I think that's such a good practice because there are times when we can access the joy. We know where it lives in our body. We could find it, the pleasure, the lust, whatever it is that we're like wanting to even, expand out of the whatever situation we're in. But there are other times when it's like, okay, I don't know where that lives in my body. So I'm going to pull on the archetype of it, and I'm going to put that outfit on right now. And I'm just going to see how it feels. And when I put that outfit on, how does my body move? And how does my voice change? And start to embody it in a way until we find where that lives in ourselves. And so that's the game I play with my son sometimes. It's like, okay, I get it that you don't feel like this right now, but if you put on the outfit, what does it feel like? And let's pretend. And then suddenly, as we're pretending, it's like, oh, we're going right into the energy of it. And it's so fun.
Oh, I love that. It didn't even occur to me to invite my kids to do it. Like I'm doing it, and that is such a fun way. I mean, it's play, it's authentic interaction with your child, it's quality time. They're feeling seen and heard, and you're taking a potential argument and fight and turning it into a game, and also getting the thing done that needs to get done. Yeah.
And it's also, it's great for me too, because there are times when it's like, I can't even find the where I want to be inside myself right now. So let's play a game. Let's put this outfit on. Let's figure it out. And I think there's like a genuine like realness to like, we try different things. We're brave enough to try different things. And even if, it doesn't feel like we can access it, is there a way to feel better in any way?
Mhm.
What is
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, at the festival, like with the wind and the dust and all the exhaustion.
Computer's about to die.
Okay.
Hold on, I need to get, I'm
Oh,
so sorry, Fiona. I don't have the charger. Hold that thought. So sorry. Hopefully you could edit this part out. My red,
no
this is
worries.
like computer dying.
Yeah, I can do it. Yeah. So yeah, at the festival, like in the past, I would have been like with the wind and the dust and the exhaustion and the contracted feelings about money, I could have been really irritated with my kids and impatient with them. And, you know, their energy and their excitement could really trigger me because my energy and excitement was cut off when I was little. And it was like told like it was irritating. And so I could have had all that going on and repeated that pattern, which so many of us do. And I have done in the past with my kids and been like, be quiet, you're irritating me. Blah, blah, blah. But instead, I was just like, yeah, a wealthy woman doesn't care about this. She walks slower. She's not worried about all of these things. And my kids are just playing. They have time to play. There's nothing to worry about.
There's so much available to us in this moment. And it's like, there's such a like joy and fun about stepping into a persona and just like giving ourselves permission to really embody that. And it can work in the full spectrum of of all the emotions, but it's so good. I love it.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, so I love, thank you for the reading. It really helps me to, it's not only fun, but it like helps me track those patterns and be able to go into my next home relationship money power dynamic with more of more space in my mind is created because I can be like, all right, I've processed those past interactions and experiences. And what do I want to create now? What's new? How do I want to? And I can watch the little patterns come up because they will for sure. But like, how is it going to be different this time? How am I going to change the story and move with more grace? Part of my gene keys is like grace, graciousness. So I'm always looking at how I can embody grace and yeah, part of that is not coming from a place of fear, being in my body, allowing the space in my mind without all the agenda and the chatter of the old story, and just having that universal intelligence, knowing that it's there for me and it's rooting me on that board of directors.
Yes, yes. And that, we really didn't talk about it too much, but astrology is based in the four elements. And so if you took all the astrology out of the picture and just looked at like, where's my emotional body right now? Our water. Or where's my mental body, the stories, the intellect, the mind, where is that? Or my physical body, earth, my way of being in the world, or our fire, our chi, our life force, our energy, our enthusiasm for life. And you just looked like, okay, those are the four quadrants. And am I allowing one quadrant to rule the show? Or is one louder than the others? Are the stories that I tell myself, the way that I think, is that driving the car? Or do they each four have an equal seat at the table and I am more balanced in that way? Because we have access to all of these energies. They're all available to us. And it's just which ones do we allow? And then when we allow those, how much more balanced we are. And then it's so interesting to see how our interactions evolve, that even when we interact with someone that's potentially out of balance, we're grounded, we're rooted in who we are. And it just, yeah, allows for a lot more ease. But I'm so excited for you because I also could see the astrology, like what's coming, what aspects are coming, and you're, going through a transition, and it's, a lot of fire and play, and like this, like fun energy is just really activating in your chart over the next, 2.5 years. And so it'll be really beautiful to see how you weave with that and how you play with it and what it opens up for you.
Yes, I'm so excited, more excited. So here's to a lot more allowance and integration and balance of all the elements. Yeah. How do people find you?
They can find me at my website, theredhead.com, or on Instagram, the_redhead. Yeah, just went with the redhead because it's been with
I
me my.
love that. She has the most in person, that red hair is just gorgeous. Yeah, okay. Well, we will see each other soon. I can't wait. It was great seeing you at the festival.
Yes, so good and so beautiful to talk to you. And like I said, it was such an honor to see your chart and to see what your soul came in with, and how your life is so beautifully orchestrated, and the lessons that you're evolving through, and who you are in this world. And even having been through the last year container with you, to see the becoming and to see the expansion. It's like, it's medicine for my soul. And it feels like it just totally encourages me to like keep going. Like there's so much available to us if we're just willing to lean in.
Yes.
So,
I'm so curious to see your chart too now. Hopefully we can go over it sometime together. I'm just interested. But all right. I love you so much. Can't wait to see you again. Thank you for doing this. Thank you for the reading. I've got internet problems again. What is happening? Oh, now you're back. Okay, well.
I don't know if you can even still hear me. That was life. Just life.
Yeah. All right. I love you. Thank you. Bye.